So a 5-0 victory for Manchester City puts them 3 points clear at the top of the Premier League with just 3 games to go. Did you see the champions today, David?
Yes, I think we did. Look, we both knew for the last few weeks that it would take something big for Liverpool to catch City. Obviously, with the hangover of the Champions League, we wondered how they'd come into this game, but they played the game in second gear. They were wonderful. When they needed to up it, they upped it. When they wanted to take their foot off the gas, they did. Fully in control. And I think it's going to be very difficult for Liverpool to catch them.
The disappointment of Madrid on Wednesday night meant that a lot of people coming here today thought maybe that may affect the Manchester City players. Did you ever think that actually the hangover, the disappointment, the crushing manner of that defeat to Real Madrid would have affected them?
It probably would have affected them Thursday and Friday morning. But then, being a professional, you know that you've got another game coming up. Of course, they're going for their third title in 4 years. 4 seasons, but that will be probably a bit of the motivational talks going on behind closed doors that, like, right, we can't win the Champions League, it's done, it's gone, but we have to make sure we win the Premier League title. Like, obviously Liverpool still have the FA Cup next week and they've got the Champions League final. It'll be a little bit of, we have to make sure that we don't slip up because we can't afford to give them an opportunity to win all of them. And you could see that in their performance. Pep was animated up and down the line, every pass, he was clapping, every player. You could just tell that they were almost back on autopilot. It was as if Wednesday night never happened.
The level of control that City have in games at the Etihad is incredible, and there can be an argument about who's the greatest Premier League team of all time, but there's been no team in the history of the Premier League that can win a game like that 5-0 without it felt like ever playing at their absolute peak. Yeah,
and that's what Pep does. You look at, say, Gundogan's come back into the midfield today alongside Rodri. I joked at you earlier, it was like the two of them had cigars in their mouth while they were playing. It was very difficult for any Newcastle midfielder or forward player to get anywhere near them. The way they controlled it, the way they passed the ball, the way they move. And you speak about the great Premier League teams. That Manchester City team is right up there amongst the great teams. The Arsenal Invincibles, the United treble winning team, the Chelsea dominant team with Mourinho. This Manchester City is there. Of course, it will always come down to they'll be judged by the trophies they win, which, of course, they're on target to win another Premier League title. But the manner in which they toy with teams, they just keep the ball. Like, even when you look back at it, like Grealish there, towards the end, it's 3-0. He just turns Trippier inside out, and they end up scoring 2 goals from it, and then all of a sudden it goes from a 3-0 to a 5-0. That's the ability that these players have. And Pep has them well oiled. And they're very good. They are very good. Very good, it turns out.
Grealish had a really good game today. Wednesday night in particular was disappointing for him because he had the 2 big opportunities to settle it, though he didn't really do a huge amount wrong for either of them. But it's never really got going from so far this season. We saw today what he can do, like a real option out on that left-hand side. The difficulty he's had at the moment is that he's going up against Phil Foden for basically one position, and Foden is arguably the best young player in world football right now.
Yeah, and look, and there's been a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure on him. But Jack knows that. We've all seen interviews where he's spoken about having that pressure. But he's got to do better in terms of his goals and assists. Now, today I thought he was excellent, albeit Newcastle kind of left him have the joy of the left wing. But going forward, next season, there's going to be a huge demand on him, and he's going to have to put in this type of performance week in, week out. Now, if you look back on Foden's goal, Zinchenko should probably score, but he mishits the ball, comes off his heel. If Zinchenko does score, he probably leaves today with another assist. That's something that those numbers do matter. Certainly, that's how these wingers are compared. And you see with Foden, with his return all year, he's been exceptional. But how great is it that Pep can leave Foden out, you start Grealish, and then you can bring him on, and that's the squad he's built. But Jack certainly will have to do more going forward.
This win was massive in a few different ways, getting the 3 points to open that gap with Liverpool. But 5 goals means now that goal difference-wise, which it could easily come down to if City were to lose a game, they're now ahead of Liverpool as well. If they are to slip up, today doesn't really change anything in a way, in that it's going to be a freakish result. It's always a sort of freakish result when Manchester City lose. So it's impossible in form lines to suggest that Wolves, West Ham or Aston Villa can go and beat this Manchester City side. You're just putting it in the lap of the footballing gods. Or can you look at any of those 3 teams and think, you know what, they've got something about them that could do damage?
Well, the next game is Wolves. You look at Wolves' performance against Chelsea, obviously coming from behind to battle it out. Wolves are in that category of just below the top 6, where they're trying to bridge that gap to get closer. I've no doubt City going there, it's going to be a tough game for City. But even so, you still look at Manchester City today. We said it time after time that they have more in them. They have more gears. You imagine Pep will make changes, he'll freshen it up. But he brings in like for like. The standard of quality doesn't drop. So when you look at City's remaining games, you cannot see them losing a game. You can't even see them drawing a game. I fully expect them to win the games. But like you said, I've been involved in those types of games where the underdog does win, but I can't see it.
From a Newcastle point of view, they were in a relegation scrap when Eddie Howe came in. When the Saudi takeover happened, they still have a chance of finishing in the top half of the table. Would you have expected more from them today?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Manchester City were superb, but you kind of want to see, there was a good turnout of Newcastle fans. I imagine there was a couple of thousand. There was no kind of fight in them almost. They kind of, once Laporte got his goal, it was kind of like they had conceded defeat and they kind of just gave up. There was moments where they had chances. If you go back to when it was 0-0, Chris Wood had an extremely good chance with a header that he headed like, it was so soft and it went into Ederson's hands. But those are the moments. But look, Newcastle at the point where, when Eddie Howe came in, he needed to stabilise the squad. He brought in some fresh faces, which gave the club a huge lift. Now they just want to get to the summer. Like you said there, the Saudi Arabian money, they're going to pump millions in. It's about who they buy. If they want to bridge that gap into the top 6, they're going to need a lot of quality players. But they definitely have the funds for it.
Some of the other stories over the weekend then, Liverpool dropping points, which has given Manchester City the opportunity. At Anfield last night, it did feel as though, for the first time, maybe fatigue impacted Liverpool, particularly in that last 15 minutes where they just look so short in ideas. What do you put down the dropping of points to?
Well, City and Liverpool have pushed each other. They're well spoken about both clubs. That intensity that they've been playing at, you're going to have a drop-off. And unfortunately for Liverpool, it was against Spurs, which were a team capable of punishing them. Even when you look back at Son's goal, there's a mix-up between Kanate and Robertson. Trent, I feel, should do more to get back. But then it's easy for me to stand here and criticise them. They've been phenomenal all year. They're on course to still win 3 trophies. Of course, that slip-up is giving Man City a massive advantage in the Premier League title. But it did look like, no matter what they had done last night, the second goal wasn't coming. Diaz's goal came from a deflection. It was just one of those nights where I don't think, whatever they did, if we were still there now and the game had ran its course till now, I still don't think Liverpool had scored. It was just one of those that nothing they could do seemed right. Yes, they had opportunities, but they just never looked like grabbing the game and scoring those goals to kind of put Tottenham to bed.
Jurgen Klopp wasn't impressed with the way that Tottenham set up, said he could never send out a team to play like that. Mm-hmm. Is that very harsh on Antonio Conte when you look at where Tottenham are coming from, where they're trying to get to, and almost a respect for Liverpool that Tottenham can't go there and try and take on Liverpool at their own game? It felt like Conte got his tactics pretty much spot on. Yeah,
of course he did. If you go to Anfield, I've gone to Anfield as a player, you have to upset Liverpool's rhythm. You have to upset them. And you've got to frustrate them. You've got to try and quieten the crowd. It's such a difficult thing to do. I've no doubt that Conte and his team they formed a plan of how they were going to approach the game, and they executed it. Look, they've gone to Liverpool. They didn't want to get beat. They would of course like to win the game, but they frustrated Liverpool. Liverpool had no answers to the questions, and inevitably they got a result which a lot of teams haven't been able to do in a long time at Anfield. So as much as Jurgen is frustrated, he's got to understand that if Spurs had come up and gone toe to toe, you're going to be beaten because Liverpool are the better team. And if those spaces have been created, your Diaz's, Salah's, Mane's, even when Jota came on, they'll punish you. So as much as Jurgen's frustrated, Conte's got it spot on, and he's done his job to give his team the best way of winning it. Whether Klopp approves or not, I don't think Conte will be fussed.
And whether it's enough for Tottenham or not, we'll find out over the next couple of weeks, because it does mean it's still out of their hands. So they're 4 points behind Arsenal ahead of the North London derby on Thursday night. So even a win there, they're still relying on Arsenal dropping points again over the end of the season. How do you call Thursday night?
Look, Arsenal obviously had a good victory against Leeds today. Mikel Arteta said he would have liked it to be a little bit more comfortable, certainly with Leeds having 10 men. I think Spurs' result would have given them a lot of confidence, because everybody would have written Spurs off going to Anfield. I would lean towards Spurs, just because I go with Conte's experience in big games across his, his management in Italy and whatever, and I think they'll have a little bit too much of them. But it is a fascinating one, and Arsenal are in the driving seat, but we go back to it could be Arsenal being Arsenal, where it just comes up a little bit short. But if they do finish in the top 4, it's been a fantastic season for Mikel Arteta.
You have a very good understanding of a modern football dressing room.
Yeah.
What's that Manchester United dressing room like right now?
Well, I watched the game yesterday. I watched large parts of the Brighton game. I personally can't understand a lot of the decisions that have been made at that club at the moment. Certainly from the playing aspect. Look, I seen Mata play during the week. Thought he very well at home. But when you go away to Brighton, you've got Matic and Mata are playing, but they're both leaving at the end of the season. And it begs to ask the question, why? I understand at home, the last home game of the season, where you might say, look, you can have your little fairy tale sending off. But even so, the smallest thing, I commented on something on Twitter about, Harry Maguire came on, but Bruno never gave him the armband. A lot of people were quick to say, well, that's a small little problem. But to me, looking from the outside, it's not. Because if you look at any club, like Fernandinho came on today, and the armband was handed straight to him.
Why does that happen?
Well, because he's the captain.
Yeah, but he didn't start. Does it make that much of a difference?
No, but it's to me, it's more about your respect for your captain. And I think at the moment at United, I think there's a divide between the players. Obviously, we've seen Paul Scholes' comments when he'd spoken to Jesse Lingard. There's just a lot of problems, and that's not just in the changing room. That's with the management. Of course, I know Eric Ten Hag has been done now, but the whole interim manager. This is Manchester United we're talking about. They don't have interim managers. For a club that was so stable for 26 years with Sir Alex, to know what it is. And look, we know the problems with the fans have with the owners, certainly with the chief execs and the head of recruitment and whatever, the players that they're signing. Inevitably United are playing players that are leaving or out of contract, whatever it may be, and that's not the way Manchester United has been ran for so long. And I think that club needs a massive overhaul, and it needs a reset. And I think it's going to take Eric Ten Hag time, but the fans are going to have to be patient with him. Is
the dressing room something that's fixable quickly, though, as a manager? That sort of toxic atmosphere that seems to be there, the constant leaks that are coming out of the dressing room. While the overall changing of Manchester United is a long-term project, actually getting that dressing room under control, is that a straightforward thing? Does a new voice come in and sort all that out? Well,
if you listen to any of the top, ex-players who do punditry, they always speak about the players they played with and how they say they speak about them in such high regard. A lot of the times change rooms are policed by the players. I watched Stephen Gerrard talk about on the overlap with Gary Neville, and he spoke about he doesn't get involved with the players' fines. He leaves the players control. A lot of it is done to the players. Now, when it becomes that toxic, that's where you need a strong figure like a manager, that you have to root the problem out. If you have even one toxic player who is either leaking stories or creating a bad atmosphere, he's taking the tone down train, you have to get that player out. Now, I can't hang my hat and saying whichever United player it is, I don't know, but they have to root out those problems. You need everyone pulling in the same direction, and at the moment United aren't, and that's a huge problem, because it seems to me that there's a divide in the changing room. There just seems to be little cliques and whatever, and there's people disagreeing, and I think regardless of the ownership of the club, I think that's Ten Hag's first job. He's got to sort the changing room. The players are going, have to be gone. The players who don't want to be there need to be gone. He needs players that want to play for Manchester United and who are willing to fight for the team. And at the moment, there's too many that aren't.
What about down the bottom of the table? Huge victory for Everton today, and Leeds in the relegation zone now. It's hard to see a way back for Leeds with the way they're playing.
Yeah, you look at Leeds and think they're in big trouble. Obviously, the injury to Dallas, which is a massive blow because he's been a huge part of their success going back into the Championship. Luke Ayling has been a stalwart. Obviously, now he's going to be suspended.
Totally reckless, and a sign maybe of what's going on with Leeds, that they had just lost their heads completely today.
And even the whole comments of Jesse Marr saying, after the Manchester City game, it felt like a victory in the stadium. Found that very interesting, because a loss never feels like a victory, regardless of the atmosphere you play in or how well your fans get behind you. Obviously, that's very important, but I found those comments.
Players can see through that.
Yeah, of course. Look, I think anyone, fans of different clubs, they can see through that too. It was a different approach they went for, obviously getting rid of Marcelo Bielsa, but they're no better position since he's gone. Yes, they've had a couple of good results here and there, but Leeds are in big trouble.
Yeah. And what about Everton? They got a lot of praise from Jamie Carragher on Monday Night Football about a different style. They're not playing it out, and they brought it back to basics. It feels like you watch them now; they're just getting stuck in. There's a attitude, there's an anger in their play. They're making life difficult for whoever they come up against. You go back to the Merseyside derby, while there was a clear difference in class. They made it tough for Liverpool, and they've done that in every game over the past 3 or 4 weeks.
And that's what they're going to have to continue to do. First and foremost, when you go out, you want to make it difficult for your opponent. You have to be, willing to run that extra bit. You're going to have to fight. You're going to have to tackle. You're going to have to block. You're going to have to get up and win your headers, whatever it may be. Now, the turning point I find, like the Liverpool, yes, they'd fought hard. But it was the Chelsea game. You could see there was a real togetherness in the group of players. That fight, character, heart, desire, all those words you use, you could see that. And there was a connection. The fans respond to that. Everton is one of those clubs that they want players to give their all. And of course, why Everton had good success, say, under the David Moyes, was they had a little bit of quality on top of that. Frank has found a way to kind of get back to them. And like you said, he stripped it back to basics. They're not playing out from the back. If Pickford has it, they go long and they get forward. And they're trying to, play that second phase ball where they're winning the ball high up the pitch. No, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way they've gone. And look, they beaten Leicester today. They had the result against Chelsea. When have Everton won back-to-back games this season in the Premier League? They've not been able to do that. And he's found a way to get them fighting. And they still have a game in hand. And if they can get a result in that, then you never know. They could pull clear. Now the pressure's massively gone on to Leeds, which puts Everton in the driving seat to stay up, along with Burnley.
They've appreciated your punditry here today. They were giving you the applause before then. Great stuff, David.
Thanks, Nathan.